Welcome to the Two Beans in a Pod by Haley and Jamie. We're starting today on a really serious note, talking about the recent, just heartbreaking floods in Texas. It's a real human tragedy. We're talking over 120 lives lost, 176 people still missing. And that includes children from Camp Mystic. The Guadalupe River, it rose 26 to 29 feet in just 45 minutes. It's staggering. One of the deadliest floods in, a century? But, even with all that devastation, we saw these incredible rescue efforts, just amazing community spirit, which is, something to see in these often divisive times. And when a disaster like this hits, it's just natural, isn't it? People start looking for answers, for reasons why. And sometimes that search leads down some, surprising paths, some really unexpected theories.
Exactly. And that's what our deep dive is about today. We're focusing on the Texas floods. We'll walk through the facts, what we actually know happened. Then we'll cut through some of those online theories that popped up almost immediately. And after that, we're going to broaden out a bit, look at a really much more radical idea about earth-changing events. It's really about helping you figure out what's genuinely happening versus, what some people think might be happening.
Okay, right. So let's unpack that first big theory that really took off online. The idea that a cloud seeding company, a startup called Rainmaker, somehow caused these floods.
Yeah, let's get straight to it. Atmospheric scientists, they've been really clear on this. Cloud seeding had absolutely nothing to do with the Texas floods. Zero. It's a complete conspiracy theory. One professor basically said, somebody is looking for somebody to blame. The actual scientific evidence just doesn't support it at all.
Okay, so what is cloud seeding then? Because it sounds pretty sci-fi, right? Making clouds rain?
Yeah, it does sound a bit like that, but it's actually science that's been around since the 1950s. So the basics are, you spray tiny particles, usually silver iodide, into certain types of clouds. These particles act like little seeds, basically. They mimic ice crystals. And they cause supercooled water droplets, that's water that's liquid but below freezing, to freeze onto them. Once they freeze, these ice crystals grow much faster, get heavier, and are more likely to fall as rain or snow. Otherwise, that water might just stay up there or evaporate. But the key thing is, it only works if the cloud already has enough of that supercooled water.
Right. And Rainmaker was operating in Texas around that time, wasn't it? So what were they doing? And how can everyone be so certain they didn't, trigger this disaster?
They were operating, yes, but their work is very specific. They aim to make rain or snow for, farms, reservoirs, aquifers, usually during droughts. And Texas had been in a severe drought before this. But here's the critical part. Rainmaker flew just one mission. It was 20 minutes long on July 2nd. That's 2 full days before the main storm system even developed and hit. And they only dispersed about 70 grams of silver iodide. Tiny amount, into just 2 clouds. So there are 2 main reasons why it couldn't have caused the floods. First is timing and wind. Those 2 clouds they seeded, they dissipated within about 2 hours, gone. Any leftover particles, the aerosols, would have been long gone too, or blown far northwest by the winds, miles away from where the big storm hit.
Okay, so completely different time, different place.
Exactly. And the second reason, this one's maybe even bigger, scale and cloud type. Look, even the most successful, ideal cloud seeding might produce, say, tens of millions of gallons of rain. Sounds like a lot, right?
Yeah, it does.
But the storm system that caused the Texas floods, it processed trillions of gallons of water.
Trillions, whoa.
Yeah. We're talking literally millions of times more water than cloud seeding could ever hope to produce. Plus, cloud seeding works best in specific conditions, like with clouds over mountains in winter orographic clouds. It's much less effective on the kinds of short-lived cumulus clouds you get in Texas in the summer, and these huge thunderstorms. They're already naturally very efficient at making rain. Seeding barely affects them.
It's like trying to cause a tsunami with a bucket of water then.
Pretty much, yeah. That's a good analogy. The scale difference is just immense.
Okay, that makes it very clear. And it sounds like Rainmaker was actually trying to be careful.
They absolutely were. They operate under really strict rules from the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. Those rules specifically say they have to stop operations if there's any risk of flooding or if a flash flood warning is issued. And Rainmaker actually stopped their flights on July 2nd before the National Weather Service even issued the flash flood warning on the 3rd. So they were proactive.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's still all this chatter online about, bigger things, geoengineering, weaponized weather. Where does cloud seeding fit in all that?
Right. It's important to distinguish here. Cloud seeding, like Rainmaker does, that's weather modification. It's local. It affects maybe a county for a few hours. Geoengineering is totally different. That's thinking about global climate intervention. Huge scale, like ideas about dimming the sun with aerosols in the stratosphere that would stay there for years. Very different beast.
Okay.
Now, it's true that some countries, like China, invest a lot in weather modification, like $1.4 billion a year, 35,000 people working on it. And yes, the U.S. military did use cloud seeding back in the Vietnam War, trying to flood the Ho Chi Minh Trail. That actually led to an international treaty, the Environmental Modification Convention in the 70s, to ban that kind of thing. But again, that's military weaponization or large-scale national programs. It's not the same as a small company doing drought relief under state regulation.
And what about the silver iodide itself? Is that safe?
Decades of this kind of operation have shown really minimal impact. We're talking maybe an 8 parts per trillion increase in silver in the soil. That's way, way less than the 2 parts per million that's often naturally present. No proven ecological harm, no weirdly colored rain or anything like that. And Rainmaker is even planning to switch to biodegradable materials, partly to, build more public trust.
Which seems really key right now, that trust issue.
It absolutely is. And Rainmaker does make its reports public on state websites like they're required to. But the CEO mentioned something interesting. Real-time reporting is actually tough because of security issues. Apparently, there are organized groups out there who actually go around destroying weather radar systems.
Seriously, why?
Because they genuinely believe the radars are causing bad weather. It just shows you the level of distrust some people have in, science and institutions right now.
Wow, that need to find someone or something to blame, it's really powerful. So while some folks are pointing fingers at cloud seeding for floods, others are looking at, much, much bigger, more dramatic ideas about why catastrophes happen. And this next one, this definitely takes things to another level.
It certainly does. This brings us to a really controversial and honestly pretty fascinating book called The Adam and Eve Story by Dr. Chan Thomas. What makes it extra intriguing is that this book was actually classified by the CIA for years. Only a small part of it, just 57 pages out of maybe 284, has ever been declassified. And even that was sanitized, according to the CIA itself.
Classified by the CIA. Okay, what on earth is this book about?
Well, Thomas's core idea is pretty mind-blowing. He claims that Earth goes through these regular cyclical pole shifts. Not just the magnetic poles wandering, but the entire crust of the Earth shifting. And these shifts, he says, cause cataclysms so huge they wipe out almost all human life, basically resetting civilization back to the Stone Age each time. He actually argues we're the 6th advanced civilization on Earth.
The 6th? Wow. Has anyone else proposed something like this?
The idea of the crust shifting isn't totally unique to him. Back in the 50s, a guy named Charles Hapgood wrote about Earth crustal displacement. What's really interesting is that Albert Einstein actually wrote the forewords for 2 of Hapgood's books. This was before plate tectonics was fully accepted, so Einstein found the mechanical idea plausible, though not necessarily the cataclysm part. It gave Hapgood's work some weight at the time.
Okay, so how does Thomas say this happens, this massive pole shift?
He describes this mechanism where Earth's outer shell, about 60 miles thick, the crust and part of the upper mantle isn't totally fixed. He says it sits on a molten sublayer that can act like a lubricant under certain conditions. And then he argues the massive ice caps, Greenland and Antarctica, aren't perfectly centered on the axis of rotation. So over time, their weight creates these centrifugal forces that eventually, he claims, pull the entire shell around, like the skin of an orange slipping over the fruit. He says it shifts about 90 degrees, moving the poles into the equatorial region, the torrid zone. And the absolutely terrifying part of his theory, he says this happens incredibly fast, in like a quarter to half a day.
Half a day, that's impossible to imagine. What would the effects be?
Horrific, according to Thomas. Because the solid shell shifts, but the atmosphere and the oceans don't, not immediately. They keep rotating west to east due to inertia at speeds over 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. So you'd have winds moving at supersonic speeds across the planet, oceans sloshing over continents and floods miles deep. He even talks about earth fire, where the molten layer breaks through the fractured crust, continents get drowned, scoured, smashed, and then potentially flash frozen if they end up at a new pole. And the old ice caps, now near the equator, would melt rapidly, raising sea levels by over 200 feet globally. It's total apocalypse.
Good grief. When did he think this was going to happen? Or happen last?
Well, he updated his prediction, I believe, to sometime around the year 2000. Obviously, that didn't happen. But he also laid out this cyclical timetable. He links Noah's flood to a cataclysm around 7,000 years ago. The Adam and Eve event of his title he places around 11,500 years ago. And others even further back. It wasn't strictly linear, but cyclical.
Okay, this is wild stuff. What kind of evidence did he offer for such extraordinary claims?
He points to several things he calls fingerprints left by these past cataclysms. One of the most famous examples he uses is the frozen mammoths found in Siberia and Alaska. They're often found in this strange, homogeneous muck, quick frozen-like, within hours or even minutes. Some have perfectly preserved internal organs, undigested food in their stomachs, even things like penile erections, suggesting they suffocated and froze almost instantly. Thomas argues no normal freezing process, natural or man-made at the time, could do that.
Okay. What else?
He also looked at geological formations. He claimed layers in places like the Grand Canyon looked like they were laid down all at once by supersonic floodwaters, showing a strange uniformity. He pointed to features like Mexican Hat in Utah, claiming the rock looks bent over by unimaginable force with scorch marks from that earth fire. Then there are things like huge granite boulders weighing tons found on the Jura Mountains in France, which are limestone. Geologists traced the granite back 50, 80 miles to the Swiss Alps. Thomas claimed only supersonic ocean water could have swept them there.
Okay, some interesting anomalies he's pointing to. What did he think triggers these events, if it's cyclical?
His trigger mechanism is maybe the most speculative part. He claimed it happens when our entire solar system passes through what he called a magnetic null zone in the Milky Way galaxy. He theorized this null zone weakens Earth's internal energy, what he called magnetohydrodynamic energy. This weakening allows that molten layer beneath the crust to become like a free-flowing liquid, the lubricant for the shift. And he pointed to the fact that Earth's magnetic field is known to be decreasing as evidence we might be approaching such a zone. He stated it was 35% weaker than 300 years prior.
Wow. It really does read like a disaster movie script. And the biblical stuff, Adam and Eve, Noah, he connects it all directly.
Oh, absolutely. He interprets Genesis, especially the creation and flood stories, as literal eyewitness accounts of these past pole shifts, passed down through millennia. He even does things like analyze Jesus' last words on the cross, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. He claims it wasn't Aramaic or Hebrew, but an ancient language, Naga, or maybe prehistoric Mayan, meaning something like, I am fainting, darkness is overcoming me. He connects this to the shock phase of the cataclysm starting.
That's quite a leap.
It is. He even speculates about angels maybe being men from other worlds arriving in spaceships during these events. It's a theory that tries to tie together geology, ancient myths, and scripture into one grand catastrophic narrative.
Okay, this is a lot to take in. Before we pivot to what mainstream science says, let's just pause for a sec. If you're finding this deep dive into these pretty intense theories interesting, maybe even a little mind-bending, do us a favor and hit that like button, and definitely subscribe to Two Beans in a Pod. It really helps us keep bringing you these kinds of conversations. All right, so we've got Thomas's dramatic theory, crustal shifts, supersonic floods, global resets, triggered by magnetic null zones. What does mainstream science, let's say NASA specifically, say about Earth's magnetic field, its shifts, and any link to climate or catastrophe?
Right, this is where we get the crucial scientific perspective. And NASA is a great source for this. They confirm absolutely Earth is surrounded by a magnetosphere. It's a huge magnetic field generated by the motion of molten iron in the Earth's outer core. It's like a giant dynamo. And this field is vital. It acts like a shield, deflecting most of the solar wind, charged particles, cosmic rays that would otherwise bombard the surface.
Okay, so the field is real and important. Does it shift like Thomas claimed?
Well, yes and no. NASA confirms the magnetic field is constantly changing. It's dynamic. The magnetic north and south poles do wander. They aren't fixed. The magnetic north pole, for instance, has drifted over 600 miles since it was first precisely located in the 1830s, and the speed of its drift has actually increased recently. And even more dramatically, magnetic pole reversals where north and south completely flip are also a real documented part of Earth's geologic history.
They are. The poles actually flip.
Yeah, they do. It's happened hundreds of times over the last, say, billion years. On average, it happens maybe every 300,000 years or so, though it's not perfectly regular. The last major reversal was about 780,000 years ago. So the idea of shifting poles, even flipping poles, is absolutely real science.
Okay, so shifts and reversals happen, but
yeah.
Do they cause the kind of catastrophic climate change or crustal displacement that the Adam and Eve story talks about?
And that's the absolute key difference. NASA's conclusion, based on extensive evidence, is very clear. There is little to no scientific evidence of any significant links between Earth's drifting magnetic poles or pole reversals and major climate changes or catastrophes.
None. So why not? What's NASA's reasoning?
They lay out several key points. First, about the field weakening Thomas mentioned. Yes, the field has weakened by about 9% globally over the last 200 years or so. But scientists see no indication that means a reversal is imminent. Reversals usually take thousands of years to complete, and paleomagnetic studies looking at magnetism locked in ancient rocks show that the field is actually about as strong now as it has been on average over the last 100,000 years. It fluctuates. Crucially, even during a reversal, the magnetic field weakens, but it does not disappear. It becomes more complex, maybe with multiple poles, but it still provides significant protection. The atmosphere itself also provides protection.
Okay, so no disappearing shield. What about evidence from past reversals? Did life get wiped out?
That's the other critical piece of evidence. Scientists have looked closely at the geological and fossil records from periods when reversals happened. They look at deep ocean sediment cores, lava flows, fossils of plants and animals, and they find no evidence of major catastrophes, doomsday events, or mass extinctions linked to those past reversals. Life seems to have continued pretty much as normal through them.
So no correlation in the past record?
Yeah.
Any other reasons?
Yeah, a couple of fundamental physics points. One is just energy levels. The electromagnetic energy interacting with Earth's magnetic field happens way up in the upper atmosphere, the ionosphere and magnetosphere. The amount of energy involved up there is about 100,000 times less than the energy driving the climate system down here at the surface, the oceans, the lower atmosphere. There's simply not enough energy high up to meaningfully change the climate down below.
Not enough power, basically.
Exactly. And the other point is even more basic. Air isn't magnetic, not really. Air isn't made of iron. There's no known physical mechanism that could connect weather patterns near the surface, wind, rain, temperature, with electromagnetic currents happening hundreds of miles up in space. Solar storms, magnetic field interactions, they affect the ionosphere, sure. That impacts things like radio communications, GPS, maybe causes auroras, but they don't reach down into the troposphere or the lower stratosphere where our weather and climate actually happen.
Okay, so magnetic pole shifts and reversals.
Yeah.
Real geological process. Happens slowly over long periods. Doesn't seem to cause extinction events or flip the crust. That's a vastly different picture from the Adam and Eve story.
Completely different. It really highlights the gap that can exist between, a scientific understanding built on multiple lines of evidence and a more speculative, dramatic theory trying to explain ancient mysteries or anomalies.
So, wrapping this all up, what does this mean for us? For you listening, trying to navigate this world full of, scary headlines and sometimes conflicting information.
Well, it circles back in a way to that human element we started with. It's interesting, in the Adam and Eve story, Thomas describes this precursor period before a cataclysm. He links the decreasing magnetic field, controversially, to things like rise in crime, societal breakdown, even cannibalism, a sort of descent into chaos because people sense doom. Now, whether you buy his magnetic link or not, that feeling he describes, that sense of unease, of things breaking down, the distrust, it does echo some anxieties we see in the real world today, like the Rainmaker CEO talking about public distrust in media and government making people vulnerable to misinformation. There's a parallel there, perhaps.
And Thomas even gave survival advice, didn't he? For his predicted cataclysm.
Oh yeah, very specific, extreme advice. Things like buy a compass and watch for erratic needle behavior as a sign the field is destabilizing. Retreat to a pre-stocked, fortified shelter high in the mountains, preferably granite mountains, away from coasts or fault lines. Very detailed, very drastic stuff.
It really shows how, when faced with something overwhelming, whether it's a real flood or a predicted apocalypse, people crave answers, certainty, a plan. Even a radical one.
Exactly. That search for understanding and control is a powerful human drive.
So this whole deep dive, it really contrasts these two scenarios, doesn't it?
Yeah.
On one hand, the Texas floods, a real tragic event where we can analyze the science, like debunking the cloud seeding theory, using data on timing, scale, meteorology. It's verifiable, measurable.
Right.
And on the other hand, the Adam and Eve pole shift theory. Speculative, dramatic, based on interpreting anomalies in ancient texts, but running counter to established geological and physical science. Compelling, maybe, but not supported by the evidence in the same way.
Precisely. And the value for you, the listener, isn't just knowing the facts about cloud seeding or magnetic reversals. It's also about honing those critical thinking skills. How do you evaluate claims, especially extraordinary ones? Where does the evidence actually point? Understanding why a theory like Thomas's might emerge, why it might resonate with people, that fear of catastrophe, the desire for hidden history can be just as insightful as debunking the science itself. It helps understand human psychology, not just geophysics.
That's a great point. It's about the process of thinking, not just the answers. So here's a final thought we'll leave you with to chew on. In this world we live in, where information and misinformation travels at lightning speed, where trust in traditional sources sometimes feels shaky, how do you personally decide what information is credible? How do you sift through the noise? And, on a practical level, how do you prepare for the unexpected, whether it's a local flood or just life's uncertainties? Thank you for listening to Two Beans in a Pod. If you are interested in the book, The Adam and Eve Story, please order from the link below. And please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to stay well informed on all of our deep dives.